See, it's so interesting how this works that it is actually the ones which are completely terrified and completely fearing death that they are ready to kill others or themselves. It is paradoxically only the ones which are possessed, let's say, by this force of death, being held, let's say, in this tight grip of evil still, that they think in these terms. And their very mentality always ends up revolving around death. And right now, in this, so-called truther or exiting the matrix or soul trap communities, there has even been a sort of like trend or ideological trend of sorts of thinking of suicide as a way to escape the so-called matrix, this so-called world of hell. Suicide, right? So unbelievable. And it's the paradox of the entire thing is that these people which consider themselves to be courageous, so courageous that they are capable of taking their own life, they are actually the most scared of death. Because an individual which has literally, let's say, overcome, truly overcome to some degree at least, the fear of death in a legitimate way will look at death and will feel to spit on it, literally spit on its head. Because for the individual that has managed to overcome, truly overcome again this fear, this possession, I would say, by this force of death, it no longer sees this force as a thing superior to oneself. And thus it can legitimately with the force, almost like with the totality of one's being, one can spit on its head and say, I want nothing anymore of you. And look into the other direction, towards life. And it is paradoxically the individual which is, as I said, still possessed by this force of death, still under this tight grip of evil, that will so, let's say, loudly proclaim, oh, I do not fear death. And I'm so ready, look, to even take my own life because I'm greater than death. I will show death, I do not fear it. See, when you are in this type of, let's say, conflict, you're still in this, tug of war with this force of death, right? Who is more strong, me or you? You're still wrestling there with death, so your let's say your locus of attention is there. It is in the idea of death. You're still there, caught in the concept of death. Even if you wait to die of old age, even if you think of suicide, you're still caught up in the idea of death. You haven't, let's say, escaped truly that force, that paradigm, that tight grip. Because one who has, let's say, truly liberated itself in a degree of that force will have a completely new interest. Its locus of attention will be something else. In this case, the only thing which remains when death is finally seen through as the joke, as the illusion, as the ultimate, let's say, sadistic perversion that it is. And the thing that remains after death starts truly collapsing, it's life. You start seeing through the charade of death, and you start seeing on the other side, let's say, of this wall or veil or glass or whatever metaphor you want to use. When you start seeing through the charade of death, you see that there's only life, and life is the only thing that actually matters, and it has total force. Life will always be more powerful than death. Always. And then see your locus of attention and the force of your being and your will changes from being focused on death and how do I wrestle death and do I kill myself or wait to die or whatever, on how do I uh, make acquaintance, understand, discover what this other force is about. What is life? I have zero interest in death anymore. I could care less about death. As I said, I could spit on its head. All I want now is to focus on life. I want to understand life. What is this mystery? What is this thing called life? And thus see, the one which has liberated itself to a certain degree of this parasite, of this virus, of this sadistic joke called death, it no longer has interest in it. It no longer tries to wrestle with it to prove, oh, I'm more superior than you, death, or no, it's just completely looking in the other direction. Man, sorry, I have another interest, it just freaking go away because I have a completely other interest, and you're just looking into another direction and say, hey, life, just whoa, just what are you? I want to discover, I want to understand. I have so much ahead of me. Death is such a petty little thing. I can't believe I was so concerned with that. Oh god, I can't even find the words to describe how petty, how little, how at the same time, stupid and perverse, and just like one of these, just the most insignificant things possible. I was, focused with that my entire life. Where actually the totality, of the mystery of existence, the outermost, thing which leaves me in awe now that I see it, was always here. It's what can be called this undescribable life. And when I say life, I refer to the force of life, not to what you see when you see, because there is a confusion of words here. Because people say, oh, well, you mean life, you mean those creatures that eat each other, and what you see on earth, animals eat other animals, and they call that life. No, when you see an animal eating another animal, you're not looking at life, you're looking at death. But they have it, everything's inverted, it's a confusion of language. No, life is that which, for example, helps you heal your body after you get a wound, right? You get a cut on your skin. There's a force there which stops the bleeding. Otherwise, if there wouldn't be a force of regeneration, a force of integrity which wants to bring you back together, back to integrity, back to health. Which this if this force wouldn't exist, then you would get a cut on your skin and you would continue to bleed up until you die. But see, you are in a realm where there are these two forces at play. There is the force of life, which wants to bring you back to wholeness, which fights to bring you back to more and more aliveness, more and more integrity. But it needs your participation as well, of course. And on the other hand, you have the same type of force, but of an opposite nature. You have the force of death, which tries to bring you more and more into states of disintegration, of decaying, of ambiguity, of confusion, of forgetfulness, of amnesia. But again, the force of death, in order to be able to do that to you, to disintegrate you, to break you apart, it needs your participation as well. And thus you have, for example, alcohol. And thus you have, for example, cigarettes. And thus you have, for example, white sugar and the consumerism society and all of this damaging, denaturing, and crappy choices and detrimental choices of all sorts of kinds. You take those choices, you choose death over life. And you choose death, and death then is allowed to do its effect upon you. It starts disintegrating you, it starts breaking you apart. And you ask yourself, why do I feel so broken? Oh, but I eat meat, I drink beers, I play video games, I entertain who knows what type of denatured ideas and philosophies, and I wonder, why am I feeling so broken? Well, because that's the force that you are engaging with. It's the force of death, which is breaking you apart, because that's what death is. It is a disintegrating force which disintegrates you, breaks you apart, severes you into pieces. Well, again, life is a force of wholeness, unification, integrity, bringing you back together, back to integrity, back to the wholeness of what you are, to the original nature of what you've been created to be. And again, as I described, life also needs your participation in order to be able to do these effects upon you. But then the question is, what are those choices which can bring me more back to life? Because now we have a world, by the way, filled to the brim with choices of death. But as you can very well see, the choices of life are a very few or very little known to us purposefully. But when, for example, some are saying, that go and help somebody else, go and do a right deed in the world, even if it appears, nobody sees, nobody cares. Go and help make a thing more right than it is. Because that's how you, let's say, align yourself more with the force of life. Stop eating meat, stop drinking alcohol, stop smoking cigarettes, help others quit these things, inspire others, make life easier for another one, inspire life in another one. See a person which is scared, go and help that person recover its faith in life. Stop being scared of this terrorizing force of death which scares everybody. Give this being new hope. There's so much that we can do to align with the force of life and be, let's say, an example in the world of this force of life. Be the life that is here to, let's say, shine a light, save a life, the life of others or the world. Be life in order to align with this force of life. But it's by design, it's by design that this world has worked to convince us that there is only one force here in the world. There is only the force of entropy and the force of death, which creates its effects in this world. And it is by purposeful design that the force of evil itself has worked to occult, to hide the existence of this other force, which also exists here in the world. Again, and it is this force of life, this spirit of all life. And this spirit, this true life, is also making its effects in the world. But because nobody has spoke about it, nobody has taught us, well, what is that force that helps you heal, physically after a cut? Oh, it's just the chemicals in your body that just work the immune system and so on. Yeah, but why is the body created in such a way then, with this striving to gain back its integrity after, let's say, it has been damaged? Well, what force drives that thing in the body to strive to gain back its integrity? What heals you from a broken heart, or from a mental distress, or what gives you those, let's say, unique, inspiring, or inventive ideas when you do not know how to get out of a difficult situation? What comes in your aid and gives you this most brilliant idea when you least expect it? See, what is this force which is visibly, if you just observe things neutrally, if you just observe things with neutral, clear discernment, you can see that there is this other force here which has always been by your side, always trying to help you. When you were in your most difficult situations, you have been given help all the time. What is this other force which has tried to get you out of so many difficult things? It has never abandoned you. Oh, but you just ignore that. All these truthers and all these, haters. Let's call them what they are. They are haters. Haters of life. They just ignore all the help that they've been given. and just prefer to focus on the misfortunes. Oh yeah, I've been so wronged in that situation. Oh, that happened. It's just horrible experience here on earth. It's hell, man. It's just freaking hell. But discounting so many other situations in which they've been miraculously helped, perhaps. No, they just turn a blind eye completely to those other situations and prefer to ignore completely this other type of force, this true spirit that is always by their side, and just prefer to think there is only one force in this reality that let's say inflicts its effects upon this world, and that is the force of entropy and death. They prefer to believe there is only death and only entropy which has a force here in the world, and completely discard this other force, the force of spirit and of life, which is also here. And I'm telling you guys, the force of spirit and the force of life is undescribably more powerful than death. What the force of spirit can do is undescribably more powerful than death. But see, it's just the catch 22 in all of this is that it just needs your participation. And because nothing or nobody here in this world conveniently hasn't been telling us that we can, let's say, devote our life or put our life in the service of life, in the service of the spirit, nobody has taught us this somehow, then it's like our life just goes on aimlessly and there is nothing to put it in service of, and we just squander it, and we just believe, oh well, I'll just die at some point. And nobody has taught you that how much your life actually matters and how much you could do with this life. It's just there is no this type of education doesn't exist here in the world on purpose. It's a deliberate design by the force of evil, of course, which has worked its outermost to hide this true force of life, to occult it, to deny it. And since we've been growing without this true education of these two forces that actually exist in the world, not only one, not only entropy and death, but also spirit, life, integrity, and unity. Right? Unity being the reverse of entropy, of course, and integrity being the reverse of entropy. And I also heard somebody else mention this, and I found it like a quite fitting subject, which fits exactly here, that, the notion of the reverse of gravity, which gravity, of course, stands for the force of death. But the reverse of gravity would be levity. And I actually think it's a quite fitting word. Levity. That which just raises you up. That which brings you up from the ground, lifts you up towards, let's say, heaven. Just like a person which is beaten down on the ground and somebody comes and gives you a hand and lifts you up, helps you lift yourself up. The force of levity, the force of life, the force of the spirit of all life. But they only teach you in science, oh, there's just entropy. Yeah, the entire universe here is governed only by the force of entropy. Yeah, it's the force of entropy which makes flowers grow, and it's the force of entropy which heals your body. It's the force of entropy which gives you these brilliant ideas. And yeah, it's just the force of entropy. No, the force of entropy and of death is it's indeed a real force which has real effects here in the world, but it gains power through our participation. And as much as these, you know, controllers of this world have managed to brainwash you to believe that independent of what you do, this world is ruled by the force of entropy. Everything disintegrates and dies. The stars are dying. Everything dies. You can't do anything about it. Just don't try to fight it. Don't try to fight with the force of death because it's a universal force. See, it's just entropy. It's just even if even the stars are dying, like who do you think you are to stand against a universal law? It's just no, just don't speak about that other force, so the force of life and you know integrity and remembrance and all of that. Don't speak about that other force. No, there's just gravity, there's just entropy, and there's just death. And this is the law. Everything disintegrates with time. Yeah, time only flows into one direction, and that direction is death. Time, no, in no way time can flow backwards. No, it just flows apparently forward towards your death and decay, independent of what you do. So don't try to fight it. Don't even, in your own mind, in your own imagination, don't even try to question it. See, poor people, they are so brainwashed that they can't even begin to allow themselves to even question the possibility, just like an imagination exercise. Just in their mind, it's just you're free to think in your mind whatever you want, right? But not even in their mind, they do not have the freedom to question death. To just take it like a contemplation exercise. Is death truly, so absolute? Are Have they told us the truth when they say the force of entropy is an absolute force? Is this feeling right to me in my being, in my heart? In Let me think about it. Let me contemplate. Why not? I can do whatever I want with my mind, right? I can use it for whatever I want. I have freedom, right, in my mind. But no, most people do not have this type of freedom, not even in their own thoughts, not even in their own possibility of contemplation. Not even in their own mind, they do not allow themselves to go outside of the box that their own mind has been enclosed in by all these false notions and all this programming and all this brainwashing that these dark controllers have done upon us. So back to this idea of death. See, the problem, let's say, is that indeed we haven't been told in this reality here, we have conveniently made aware only of one of the forces which inflicts its effects here in the world, and that is the force of entropy and death. But we haven't been made aware of this other force, that it also, as I said, radiates out, I would say, its its truth, its power, and its effect here in the world, and that is the force of spirit and of life. See, both of these forces are here. Both the force of life and the force of death. Both the force of levity and the force of gravity. Both the force of integrity and unity and the force of entropy. But as I said, we have been conveniently made aware of only one. So we can remain tied to this idea of the inevitability of death. So we remain focused on death. So we know only death and nothing of life. By the way, have you thought of what happens, for example, in some of those moments when you can't remember a thing? Let's say, just a simple example, when you have a word in your mind, or the name of a street, or something that you can't just remember for a moment, and you have that lapse of memory. You can't remember it. And then you take those milliseconds, of trying to remember it, and all of a sudden it pops, and you remember it. Have you wondered what exactly gives you that memory back after you lost it? What helps you remember a thing after you lost the memory of it, the knowledge of it? See, it's the same force of life, the same force of the spirit. Because death is the one which makes you ignorant, which takes knowledge from you, which makes you amnesiac, which brings you more and more into states of confusion, ignorance, and darkness. But of course, the force of life is the opposite. It's the one which gives you back the knowledge, which clarifies your mind, which takes you out of confusion, and thus out of darkness, out of ignorance, out of amnesia, and in your daily existence is just seen as that inexplainable moment that you've probably never even observed or questioned it, of what exactly gives you an answer, a name, a street name, or something that you forgot. After you forgot it, what exactly brings you back that knowledge after you forgot it? What exactly gave you that memory back? So this has been the greatest lie of all, the greatest charade of all, the greatest hiding of all. Hiding this true force of life from us, making us believe we are completely doomed to the force of death and to the so-called inevitability of death. And that independent of what we want, independent of anything we do, we are just going to die, because everything dies. And that's just inevitable. So don't try to fight it, don't try to question it. Try to live your life as best as you can, but know that you are going to die eventually. This has been the highest programming and the highest indoctrination of all. And right now, I can say from experience that it takes the outermost courage, the outermost courage to believe in life. To believe in the force and the power of life. It takes the outermost courage imaginable.